The silent train. The old tracks that cut through the forest on the edge of town had been abandoned for decades. Once a bustling route for travelers and cargo alike, the rails had fallen into disrepair, their rusty surfaces now barely visible beneath layers of dirt and overgrowth. The local children whispered tales of a ghostly train that appeared at midnight, but most dismissed it as mere folklore. Most, except for Daniel. Daniel had grown up hearing the story from his grandfather, a retired railway worker. According to him, the train was no ordinary specter. It was silent as a whisper, an eerie anomaly that defied all logic. He would often warn Daniel, "Stay away from those tracks at night, boy. Nothing good ever comes from messing with the past." Despite the warnings, Daniel's curiosity got the better of him. As an amateur photographer with a penchant for the paranormal, he couldn't resist the urge to capture the elusive ghost train on film. One chilly autumn evening, armed with his camera and a flashlight, Daniel set off for the old tracks, determined to uncover the truth. The moon hung high in the sky, casting an otherworldly glow over the landscape. Daniel followed the faint path through the trees, the air growing colder with each step. He arrived at the tracks just before midnight, the silence around him almost deafening. Setting up his camera on a tripod, he waited. Minutes passed, then an hour. Just as Daniel began to doubt the stories, a faint, almost imperceptible vibration ran through the ground. He glanced down the tracks, and his breath caught in his throat. There, in the distance, a faint light appeared, steadily growing brighter. The silent train was real. As the train approached, Daniel's excitement turned to dread. The locomotive was unlike any he had ever seen, its design antiquated and otherworldly. The carriages seemed to shimmer, their outlines hazy and indistinct. Despite its spectral appearance, the train moved with a terrifying purpose, gliding silently over the rusted tracks. Daniel raised his camera, his hands shaking. He snapped photo after photo, the flash illuminating the eerie scene. As the train drew nearer, he could see faces pressed against the windows, their expressions frozen in silent screams. The passengers, if they could be called that, appeared as if trapped between worlds, their eyes pleading for release. The train slowed to a stop before him, and Daniel's curiosity overpowered his fear. He stepped closer, reaching out to touch the cold metal of the carriage. To his surprise, the door creaked open, revealing a dark interior. Compelled by an unseen force, he climbed aboard. Inside, the air was thick with the stench of decay. The seats were filled with shadowy figures, their features obscured by darkness. As Daniel moved down the aisle, the whispers began. Soft, mournful voices that seemed to echo from the depths of the train. He tried to turn back, but the door had vanished, replaced by an endless corridor. Panic set in, but Daniel forced himself to press on. He reached the end of the carriage and found another door, this one leading to the engine room. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was empty, save for an old, tattered journal lying on the engineer's seat. Daniel picked it up, his hands trembling. The pages were filled with scrawled entries, detailing the final journey of the train and its ill-fated passengers. The last entry sent chills down his spine. "We were lost, traveling through a fog that never lifted. The tracks led us nowhere, and the passengers began to change. They are no longer human, and neither am I. We are bound to this train, cursed to ride the rails for eternity. A sudden jolt rocked the train, and Daniel looked up to see the ghostly figures closing in on him. Their eyes were hollow, their mouths open in silent screams. He tried to back away, but there was nowhere to go. The train lurched forward, and the figures reached out, their cold hands grasping at his clothes, his skin. Desperation filled him as he fought to break free, but the grip of the spectral passengers was unyielding. They pulled him down, their touch draining the warmth from his body. Darkness enveloped him, and the last thing he saw was the journal slipping from his fingers, its pages fluttering shut. When Daniel didn't return home the next day, his friends and family launched a search. They found his camera and equipment by the tracks, but there was no sign of him. The photos he had taken revealed nothing but empty rails and an overgrown path. The legend of the silent train grew, with Daniel's disappearance adding a new layer of mystery. Years passed, and the story of the ghostly train continued to be whispered among the townsfolk. Some claimed to hear the faint sound of a train whistle in the dead of night, while others swore they saw a light moving through the trees. But no one dared to venture to the tracks after dark. One evening, a young woman named Emily, fascinated by the legend, decided to investigate. She followed the same path Daniel had taken years before, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. When she reached the tracks, she found an old, tattered journal lying on the ground. As she picked it up, a shiver ran down her spine. The air grew colder, and she heard the faint, mournful whistle of a train in the distance. She turned to leave, but the journal's final entry caught her eye. "If you find this, know that I am still here, bound to the silent train. Leave now, or you too will become one of us, lost in the endless journey." Emily dropped the journal and ran, her heart pounding. She didn't stop until she was safe at home, vowing never to return to the tracks. The legend of the silent train remained a haunting reminder of the dangers that lurked in the forgotten corners of the world, where the past and present intertwined in a chilling dance of the unknown.